watch and burn.
Hey everybody, so tonight I am attempting to discuss Gus Van Sant's 2005 film, Last Days, which may or may not have something to do with the last days of Kurt Cobain, who killed himself, the dude from Nirvana, shot himself back in the 90s. But behind the camera that you can't see, a ways off, there's a bar, and there's a bar band there. And they just butchered Play That Funky Music, White Boy. They killed that song dead. And they're currently butchering I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. So choosing to do them here probably wasn't the smartest move. Oh, there's the chorus again. See, this is going to be very difficult to stay on point here. Because, oh, God. I love rock and roll. Put another day. Oh, okay. If you can't sing, don't sing. It's that easy. It's like somebody my size shouldn't be trying to convince people that we're in the NFL, you know? Much like that guy should not be singing in a band. But anyways, yeah, that's right. There it is. Wasted a minute already. I am here attempting to discuss Gus Van Sant's 2005 film, Last Days, which again hypothesizes on what Kurt Cobain, in this case, he's a dude named Blake, portrayed by Michael Pitt. And it does hypothesize, like I said, what exactly Kurt Cobain might have gotten up to in his last days on Earth before his suicide. If Courtney didn't have El Duce kill him, that is, of course. We'll never know now. I'm not entirely sure why Gus Van Sant made this movie. I know that technically, too, this is his third and final installment in his Death trilogy. This started with Jerry back in, I think 2001 or 2002, and then he continued it in 2003 with Elephant, his school shooting film. And again, this is the conclusion of his Death trilogy with Last Days, which is, again, apparently about the last few days of Kurt Cobain's time on Earth. He has a friend in this, his sort of like not girlfriend, but a girlfriend. Her name is Asia, and she's played by Asia Argento. And he has a buddy, he's living with him too, up at his house. His name's Luke. And of course, he's played by Lucas Haas. I like that. I love it when movies use actors' real names for some reason. I always have. There's something really endearing about it. It's like the actor is the person or the character, and the character is the actor. But yeah, so just basically, kind of reminds me of In a Violent Nature, for anybody that's seen that movie, the sort of the slow cinema slasher film that was released in 2024, made in Ontario, where it shows everything from the killer, Johnny's perspective. So there's a lot of sort of over-the-shoulder shots, so to speak, of Johnny walking around the forest looking for victims. That's kind of what this movie reminds me of. Because, I mean, I haven't seen this movie in years. I saw In a Violent Nature a couple weeks ago, and then I watched this again a couple days ago. So I'm thinking this reminds me of In a Violent Nature, but technically In a Violent Nature, should have been influenced by this because this came out years before. But yeah, you see Cobain, or Blake, see him walking around a lot. He's just kind of wandering around in the forest behind his house, and he's fucking around, and he's... Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth is in this. She plays a record executive. And towards the end of the movie, Blake, Kurt, he ends up at a party, and he bumps into Harmony Korine. And of course, it isn't Harmony Korine, it's just a guy at the party. But any movie that Harmony Korine's going to be in is going to be something that I'm going to pay attention to, because I have been fucking in love with Harmony Korine since I was a kid. And naturally, he's in a Gus Van Sant film. Gus Van Sant produced the first movie of Larry Clark's that he wrote, but way back when, kids. And if I'm not mistaken, too, Harmony Korine pops up in Gus Van Sant's Good Will Hunting, when Matt Damon's in the juvenile facility, and he's on the phone with Minnie Driver, and the guy that walks by, he's all kind of crazy and skinny. That was Harmony Korine, too. So it's cool, because that means Harmony Korine's been in a couple Gus Van Sant films, which is really awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think it's cool the way that Van Sant set this up, and I liked how the dude was wearing women's clothes. Blake, was wearing women's clothing, because that was something Cobain did a lot. And he did sort of have Kurt Cobain vibes, but I just don't understand what the actual motivation for making this film. I can understand rounding out his Death trilogy, that makes good sense. But to loosely attach this to a real person's passing, and it just seems so loose. It's just this is so free-form cinema, where it's I'm sure there is a story, but there isn't much of a story. It's just Cobain, Blake, wandering around doing whatever. All his friends have sex around him and shit. And then he goes out to the whatever it was, and he blows his head off. And the end of the movie is identical to what Cobain, or at least what we discovered Cobain did. Everything looks the same, the shot's the same, the legs are the same, he's wearing the same jeans. So the end of the movie is very definitely supposed to be Kurt Cobain, but I still don't understand why this movie was made. I mean, I know it was made just a little over 10 years after Cobain took his own life or was murdered or whatever. But it still seems too far out. It feels like this movie would have been better made maybe a couple years afterwards. But it was at that point that, Van Zandt was producing kids and shit. And Van Zandt was in his 90s phase with like My Own Private Idaho and shit. So I don't get this movie. I just don't understand this movie. It's watchable. It does feel a little like whatever, like we're just watching these people float through their lives, like they're just existing up in Blake's castle in the forest. And yeah, I mean, the movie ends with his friends driving away. They learn of his suicide, and then they drive home. I mean, it's a cool movie. It's just I don't really understand why this movie was made. It's not directly about Kurt Cobain, obviously, because the character's name is Blake. He does look like Cobain, but he doesn't look like Cobain. He dresses like Cobain, but then he doesn't dress like Cobain. And, I mean, maybe this is exactly what Cobain got up to in his last days. We'll never know, But yeah, I think actually that's where I'm going to leave it. So, like always, thank you so much for hanging out with me for just about 7 minutes while I discuss Gus Van Sant's 2005 film, Last Days. Like always, if you like this review, or you like this movie, or if you understand this movie and why it was made, don't forget to go out and do something nice for somebody. But like always, most importantly, never forget that the world is a way better place because you are in it. I'm getting out of here. Have a good night. Fuck, that guy can't sing. I'm going to go over and tell him. No, I'm not. Have a good night.